Hey, what's going on? So it's John here. I decided to try out this podcast thing just to see if it's something that I could actually take long term. Podcasting is something that I'm not relatively familiar with, but I'd like to, give it a test trial to see if it's something that I can do long term. So with that being said, here's a test trial. So yeah, for this article, I've decided to talk about something most people are familiar with: the military-industrial complex, which we'll call MIC for short. So as usual, I'll invite both sides of the conversation and give you, the reader, the ability to make a subjective opinion based on facts that I'll bring to light. So I never get into conspiracies due to wanting to keep my articles as pure and rational and as data-based as possible, and away from the conspiracy groups that seek to dilute the sensitive ecology of information that we as a species rely on. But I would like to also mention that it's our duty as independent citizens capable of free thought and expression to recognize when a group is being taken advantage of, especially by those who lack the power or the intellect to be able to defend themselves. Before we can create and change a system that might not function for the betterment of humanity, we must first be aware that this exists at all. So the mic is a concept coined by Eisenhower, originally called the congressional mic, due to how closely tied it was to the federal government, especially at that point in time. So here's a description of the mic for those that aren't familiar with it. So the military-industrial complex is an informal alliance between a nation's military and the defense industries that supply it. Seen together, they have a vested interest which influences public policy and legislation. So a driving factor behind this relationship between the government and the defense money corporations is that both sides benefit. One side from obtaining the war weapons, and the other side from being paid to supply them. So this term is often used in reference to the systems behind the military of the United States, where it's most prevalent due to close links between the defense contractors, the Pentagon, and politicians. And it also gained popularity after the warning that Eisenhower gave in 1961 with his farewell speech. So here's an excerpt from Eisenhower's farewell speech to the nation. So, in the Council of Government, we must guard against acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military industrial complex. The potential for disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of huge industrial and military machinery defenses with our peaceful methods and goals, so that the security and liberty may prosper together. So our presidents have spoken on this. Other presidents have spoken on this idea, including John F. Kennedy, when mentioning the secret societies and the censorship that happens that led to the destruction of several different civil liberties. So here's a brief section of that speech. So the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excess and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it. Today, there is very little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating an arbitrary restrictions. Today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions don't survive with it. And there's very grave danger in an announcement need for increased security that will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. The only reason to have secret societies is believed to be because people aren't, intelligent enough to be able to make rational decisions themselves. But I disagree with this idea. I believe that we lack not the intelligence, we don't lack the genius. I believe that we lack those who seek to inform our citizens and people who have the courage to act when they become informed. There may be groups that are involved. There are many groups that are involved in the mic, including groups like the UN, social media conglomerates, big data tech companies, and representatives from some of the most powerful countries. And of course, the United States is the leader of this group, thankfully. So most people's first notion is that the primary motivation for the mic is money, right? So it's enterprise, wealth, but I think it's a whole lot deeper than that. So money to this group is of no relevance. Money is just a means to be able to trade ideas, trade opinions, trade information, trade votes. This group literally is the currency. So the mic has a deeper goal, which is to control what is seen, how people feel, to alter the past as well as change the future. So I'll expand on this idea. So to control what people see gives them my control over what's talked about and what information is being exchanged, right? So if you can control what is seen, you can ultimately control how people feel about the direction of how the world is going. If you can control how people feel about a given subject, you can guide their subconscious. You can guide their biases basically about what happens in the past. If you can control how they feel about what's happened in the past, you can control the future of their decisions. So surveillance capitalism is also a really good theory to mention because it provides good illustration of the mechanism behind the mic. In a subsequent 2015 article, Zuboff analyzed the societal implications of this mutation of capitalism. She differentiated surveillance assets from surveillance capital from surveillance capitalism, and their dependence on global architecture of computer mediation, which she called Big Brother. So, a distributed and largely uncontested new expression of power which constitutes hidden meanings and mechanisms of extraction, commodification, and control that threatens the values such as freedom, democracy, and privacy. So, according to Zuboff, surveillance capitalism was pioneered at Google and later Facebook in much of the same way that mass production and managerial capitalism were pioneered by Ford and General Motors. So, a century earlier, um, and it has become a dominant form of information capitalism. So, with enough data, you can make predictions about how things will play out. If you can make accurate predictions, you can also alter these situations to fit whatever agenda is most powerful or more helpful to your goal. Now, with that being said, there's a counter group that believes that the only bad part about the mic is that it involves death that inevitably happens due to war. So during war times, some of the most helpful technologies were made, as well as some of the most famous art. If the only bad thing about war is death, why not always be in a state of possible war? This state of suspended perpetual war seems to be the motivator. It motivates people in a way that nothing else can. So this leads a lot of people to ask, is the mic necessary for the benefit of humanity? If this group is literally creating the tools that we'll use in the future, should we look at it less as an Orwellian big brother and more like a guiding force that's in the benefit of humanity? So there are some wars that should always be fought for, but I believe we should be heading to build bridges, to unite as a group. Humanity has an enemy. It's unseen, but it rings to divide and conquer. If democracy dies in darkness, we are the light.